G'day, welcome. Let's get this review of our 56-point win against the North Melbourne Football Club at Marvel Stadium yesterday. It was a Good Friday fixture, and in the end, it was a very, very comfortable win. It felt like a little bit more than that. Big score. 137 points, 21 goals, 11. It is a big score compared to 12, 9, 81. Could have we restricted them a little bit more than that potentially? But you take that 56-point win and you run. I did speak extensively in my preview about us being able to flex our muscles in this game, and I use that term symbolically rather than being a flat track bully and going out there and necessarily bullying the opposition. I don't think we did that, but what I meant was I just feel we needed to show on the scoreboard, and I think that's a pretty decent win if you look at what North Melbourne have produced so far this season. I think the Giants got them by, about 39 points in round one, and that was over there in Sydney. And then last week, Fremantle, after a tardy start, got the job done by about, 5 goals as well. So, I mean, it's, they're no nut mugs, North Melbourne. But what I wanted to see reflected in our performance yesterday was the big difference between where we're at and where North Melbourne are at. And that's exactly what we got. So I am content with this performance. It's not about being, I suppose, happy, because we're going to face stiffer tests than North Melbourne, and you've got to play every team in the competition. And each team's going to have its challenges, both physically, but this one probably more so mentally. And I think what made this a pleasing performance by our team was that we did exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see us apply that sort of manic pressure. And I feel like the attitude, without knowing what goes on behind the scenes, but the attitude in this game and the application in this game to actually put on that pressure was there to see. And at the end of the day, North Melbourne, other than the fast start they got, they just weren't able to handle that pressure. And that showed pretty much all over the ground, and it certainly showed in regards to their undiscipline. I thought North Melbourne was somewhat undisciplined in this game and a little bit sort of clumsy. And that was shown with the 50-metre penalties and also, the number of free kicks they gave away, which showed a level of frustration on their behalf, and also showed that they weren't able to maybe handle the occasion like a professional team does. And look, just on the free kick count, I can understand. Okay, I've got sort of empathy for North Melbourne and their supporters in regards to sort of having a bit of a whinge about the umpires. And look, there was some just ones which were like, Jesus Christ, just sort of let that go. And maybe we were on the receiving end and we had the rub of the green. But at the same time, it wasn't that bloody long ago. I remember a game at Marvel Stadium, and we played North Melbourne. I think it was in 2016. It might have even been Daniel Geringe's first game for our football club, and North Melbourne pulled our pants down. They were a pretty bloody good football team then, and I think they had Jarrett Waite. Jarrett Waite had gone across and was playing in Del Santo, and Boomer Harvey was still playing, and Big Todd Goldstein was the best ruckman in town, and that's what one of their supporters was yelling out behind us for the whole day, which became a little bit annoying. But I just remember that game, and they smashed us, and they just got the rub of the green the whole day. They were getting free kicks. Our defenders were were panicking, and Ben Brown was on the receiving end of about 4 or 5 free kicks, which resulted in a couple of goals, and they just got everything off the umpires. And that's exactly where these two teams are at right now. We're that team at the moment where we're probably going to get the rub of the green. One, probably in for the ball first, and we're proactive in hunting the football. And yeah, for some reason that the umps always, not so much favour, but the better teams in the competition always just appear to get a better run because they're a little bit more disciplined, have better structure, and don't get frustrated. So that's the way I see it. The tide will no doubt turn for North Melbourne in that regards. But yeah, I mean, if you're whinging about this game in regards to the free kicks and that being a significant factor in North Melbourne getting done in this game, then you got fucking rocks in your head. This was a comprehensive performance by our football team. Was it perfect? No. Are we expecting us to be perfect right here, right now? No. Will we ever be perfect? No. There's still plenty to work on. But in regards to what I wanted to see and just showing the distinct difference between us and them, I couldn't have been happier. I could not have been happier. And I'll say it again. I thought the pressure and the application to the task at hand and pretty much a 4-quarter performance. There was a level, I suppose, of frustration with giving up some goals in red time, sort of at the back end of quarters, which, yeah, it was a little bit annoying, but that happens. North Melbourne can score. They showed in the first couple of games of the season that they're capable of scoring and scoring quickly. So I thought it just was a really good performance by our team. And once again, this sets us up. 3 wins now. We speak about, obviously finals, top 8, but top 4, top 2. We're right in the mix so far. So good stuff. I spoke in the preview about the ruck contest with Christian Cherry and TDK. I thought that was it wasn't probably something that a lot of people would have been looking at, but I kept a very close eye on that matchup, and it was hard to split. I thought it was impossible to split. In fact, if you look at their stats, I mean, it was pretty much identical. Both boys had 13 touches. I think Cherry had 31 hit-outs and TDK had 30. It was a really good battle and another good learning curve for TDK. I didn't think it was an outstanding performance by TDK, but I think we held sway in that area of the ground. It wasn't like North Melbourne dominated. I still think the stoppage work is something that can go to another level with our team. I think we were beaten in clearances around the ground, although out of the centre, I think we had the better of North Melbourne, particularly in that second quarter where we got right on top. I thought Patrick Cripps in the middle of the ground was fantastic once again, just with his ability to get his hands on the footy and then just his vision by hand. And thought he made really good decisions yesterday, Patrick Cripps. It's probably the best, probably the cleanest I've seen him for a while, but also just his decision making was absolutely fantastic. I mean, he's probably used the ball by hand more than by foot, which is what we want to see, but his ability to release our other midfielders and players in better position was just A grade. So I really liked that matchup of TDK and Cherry, and I thought it was split the points, I thought, and I thought Paul Curtis got away from us a little bit. Thought he looked to be probably the most dangerous small forward on the ground. I'm not 100% who was responsible for Paul Curtis, and then Eddie Ford came on and kicked a couple of goals as well. So it's something to have a bit of a look at. Our small defenders, and that ability to really lock down as well as being attacking. But on the other side of the ledger, I thought our small forwards as well got busy. Although they didn't win a lot of the football, they certainly made a fair bit of impact on the scoreboard. Great performance, but obviously not getting carried away at this stage because we've got Fremantle this week and they're in pretty good nick themselves. They had a decent win against the Crows last night. That was a dreadful game of football. It really was. It was, in fact, if you look at both games yesterday, from a neutral perspective, if you're not a Kangaroo supporter, or a Carlton supporter, or a Crows supporter, or a Fremantle supporter, that was a real, pretty sort of dull day in regards to football. So, but it is what it is. But the Dockers have got a pretty good system at the moment, and they've got a pretty good midfield and a good ruckman, and it's going to be a good test when we play the Dockers next week. Looking forward to that. All right, let's have a look at our players individually. I've spoken about the fact that from a team perspective, I thought the application was fantastic. So let's just go individually. And I don't want to get too caught up in stats because I will mention the stats, but at the same time, it's sometimes difficult, particularly with these players. And I'll start with Ollie Hollands. I'll go in jumper order. He's only had 12 disposals. He's had 4 tackles, and there's no doubt he's running and his ability to apply, his pressure racks are right up there. In fact, they're probably nearly the best in our football team. So it's very difficult just to go, okay, he's only had the 12. He's had 8 and 8 in the first 2 rounds. He's had 12 now. They're not big numbers, but he's doing the job in regards to his pressure in that area of the ground, which is really important. So can he do a little bit more offensively? Of course he can. Did he get as much midfield minutes yesterday? I don't think he did. I didn't see him many times in the middle of the ground. He pretty much played on the wing for the whole game. And it was a serviceable performance. And I would probably say now at the moment, he's your pure role player at the moment, Ollie Hollands, without being particularly damaging offensively. So I look forward to him becoming that player this year. I think he can go to another level. I thought Chera, was it his best game for the season, with the weaker North Melbourne outfit, although their midfield is quite strong. I still didn't think it was a great performance by Adam Chera. 22 touches. He's had the 7 tackles, so he's working hard. Couple of clearances. He did hit the scoreboard. So I don't know. I feel like, once again, he's not in the greatest of nick at the moment, Adam Chera, but it's another workmanlike performance by him without being particularly sort of damaging. I thought Zach Williams was really quiet. But was part of a back 6 that looked fairly well organised for most part. But at the same time, I did speak about Curtis and I did speak about Eddie Ford, and Zerha wasn't bad. It wasn't a great game by Zach. So it's one to watch, I think, given that he's come back after a long layoff. Didn't think it was great. Fogarty, thought he worked really hard again. It was a 4-tackle game with 17 disposals. Got involved a little bit more with ball in hand and all that type of stuff. So I thought it was a good game by Lockie Fogarty again without being damaged in front of the big sticks. But his goal assists were good. He set up a number of sort of forward thrusts and was pretty creative as well. And quite unselfish. Remember a couple of times there we were sort of saying, have a shot yourself, take that on yourself. And I thought at times we sort of overused it a little bit and tried to be too unselfish. I would love to see him take that responsibility himself, although he's probably not the greatest kick with a great penetration. In saying that too, I think one thing that, just quickly while I'm thinking about that, one thing that did frustrate me a little bit, particularly in the first half, was our bombing the ball inside forward 50 and thinking that Harry and Charlie would just get the job done in the air. We only took 12 marks inside 50 from 61 entries, which is fairly low. I think there was one time there that I was most excited. I think it was Chera. I think Chera was the one who kicked the ball inside forward 50, and we hit Harry up on a lead. That's the type of football that I want to see more of from our team. Cripps, I mentioned, already spoke about him. Not a really good leader's game. You want to get your boys up. You want to get them up for these games against these teams where there could be a lapse in concentration. And, there's a lot going on in this Good Friday game. There's a lot of, it's for a magnificent cause, don't get me wrong, but I mean the distractions before game. It's got a sort of, I'm not saying it's a grand final, but it's got that feel about it, before the game. And you need your leaders like Patrick Cripps to get these boys sort of switched on. And I'm no doubt that Voss would have been doing the same thing behind the scenes as well. But I just thought it was another terrific captain's game by Patrick Cripps. Harry's he's just killing it. He's killing it. He's in rare nick. There's going to be a time where he's probably going to have a bit of a lull this season. It's not going to be just this every week, but he's running on top of the ground. He looks good, kicking the ball beautifully. Confidence is up. Doing some nice work when he goes into the centre of the ground as well. Offensively, he can move well. I actually joked to my son that he looks better in the ruck than what TDK does at times. But yeah, he's playing some terrific football at the moment. Gov, really aggressive at the man and aggressive in the air. Like he's just throwing himself at everything. It's sort of heart in your mouth stuff with Gov. Fuck, like he's sort of landing on his back and his body looks fantastic, but his body still looks a little bit sort of fragile. And when he's throwing himself in the air and he lands so heavily and he's throwing his weight around and getting, I suppose, a bit of a reputation from opposition fans. They don't like him, and that's okay. We don't want opposition fans to look at our team and go, fuck, we love Mitch McGovern. He's got that look about him that would annoy you, but, he's playing some really good football for us at the moment. Mentioned TDK. Akers, just another solid performance. Works his ass off defensively. I think Akers is, I'm not saying he's the best wingman in the competition, but I think he's the best sort of defensive wingman. His ability to get back and just clog up space. So he's as courageous as they come, Blake Akers. I thought it was a good game. Fantasia, good to see him come on and kick that goal and set one up. So, yeah, starting as a sub, I actually picked it. I actually picked Orazio. That's one thing I picked. Orazio as a sub. So maybe that's something that they do moving forward for a little while to get him right. Not quite sure, but thought he did okay when he came on. When the sting was well and truly out of the game at that stage. Jack Carroll, thought he fumbled a little bit at times and his ball use wasn't great, but it was another, I suppose, step in the right direction. He didn't drop. I don't think it was as good as his game against the Tigers or his performance in the third or the second half against Brisbane, but it was solid. It was solid, but jury's still out just with his foot, what he does with the ball. Durden, very, very low numbers, but two solid goals. One from a free kick, the other from a nice snap. So yeah, maybe a little bit of confidence for him, but only 4 touches. Elijah Hollands, he now there's one guy that worked into the game. He was, he must have an engine like his brother. He was like, he just didn't look tired. He looked like the freshest player on the ground. With 22 disposals, and we saw firsthand his ball use on both sides of the body, and yeah, touch of class and just uncompromising sort of performance. Very, very promising against against a team which didn't offer or didn't put out a lot, or didn't there wasn't a hell of a lot of pressure in that second half when Elijah Holland started to win a lot of the ball. Marchbank started very shakily. In fact, there was a time there in that first quarter where I'm thinking, fuck, geez, did they pull the right move here and play Callum Marchbank over Brody Kemp, considering that Marchbank's been out of football for a period of time with illness, and I'm not saying he's not part of this best 22, but you know, would have hurt to have played Callum Marchbank in the VFL and give him a game there before chucking him into the mix. But he looked rusty. He looked really rusty early in the game, and got a little bit better, and then got cleaned up by a really. Look, don't get me wrong. I like players throwing themselves at everything, but Jordan Boyd in that contest, it looked reckless, and it was friendly fire. And unfortunately for Callum Marchbank, he's on the receiving end of another probably little stint on the sidelines. That I'm not quite sure the wash up with that, whether it's a concussion at this stage, sporting a black eye and stuff. So yeah, maybe a stint on the sidelines again for Callum Marchbank. Wiedering he just stepped straight back in. It was a great tussle. It was a great tussle with Larky. I thought Larky had a few little moments here and there, and Jacob Wiedering certainly threw his weight around when Larky threw, I think it was McGovern to the ground in the third quarter, and Wiedering just came in and I showed a care for his teammates, and I thought he marked really well and defended really well and showed his frustration at times, of being beaten, which I like as well. Hates being beaten. So I thought it's great to have him back. Like, you just see the difference with him there. It's just safe, just safe. Newman, once again, was he responsible for Paul Curtis? Not quite sure, but 17 touches. I mean, the defenders probably didn't have to do a hell of a lot in this game, so it's very hard to judge these defenders, given the way the game sort of panned out. I thought Hewitt was excellent. He went to Luke Davies-Uniacke early, and it was almost like he made that his starting point to keep Davies-Uniacke, because he's a very, very good player, in check, and he somewhat did that, but at the same time was able to have an impact himself. He kicked a goal, and then he ended up with 26, 13 and 13 and 6 tackles and 9 clearances. It's a big game, and I thought LDU ended up becoming one of North Melbourne's better players, but the damage had been done. The game had already been set up. And I thought it was a really good performance by George Hewitt. I thought he was one of our best. Curnow did what he had to do, looked dangerous. He got a lot of free kicks, and they did panic on him. They did. The North Melbourne defenders just panicked on him. And he's kicked 4. And he's certainly second fiddle at the moment to Harry, and there's nothing wrong with that. We want both of them to be able to play in unison. We don't necessarily need one to be just streets ahead of the other. We want them both to be having an impact and working well together, and I think for the most part they're doing that. Boyd started the game pretty well, but I thought he sort of drifted out of the game, and there was that episode where he just fucking jumped into Marchbank, which I thought, I don't know if that was necessary at that stage of the game. He was okay. I think he can still do a little bit more, but it was a solid defensive performance. The same with Sard. I thought it was an okay, solid defensive effort without anything special. He's actually quite liked his game. 3 goals, 12 disposals, got busy. Started a little bit slowly, but then worked his way into the game. And I'm going to have to educate, or finish off, obviously, on Matthew Cottrell. I'm going to have to educate myself on what Matthew Cottrell's actually doing, because... and I'm a fan. Like, I have been a fan for and I think you all know that on this channel. But I think he's dividing me at the moment. And he feels like he must be doing his job. So I have to educate on exactly what he's doing, because halfway through the last quarter, he'd had 3 touches, and then I think he got 5 touches sort of at the back end of the last quarter to get him up to 8 disposals. He's only had 2 tackles. He's played a lot of game time. And he's been pretty much the same in the first 2 games, although he did hit the scoreboard in the opening 2 games with some important goals. But he's just not winning the ball. Now, whether his role has somewhat changed since last year, and exactly what the fuck Matthew Cottrell is actually doing. And once again, I don't want to say that his position should be in doubt, because I just don't. I've got to educate myself. I've got to watch him more closely to find out exactly what his role is. Now, just thinking about it, and what North weren't able to do yesterday, although Sheasel, Fisher and McKercher won a bit of the ball, they weren't necessarily damaging between the arcs. They didn't get that run and carry slingshot North ball football going. Now, and I don't think Richmond necessarily did it either. Did they? I can't think back that far when we played Richmond, to be perfectly honest now. But although they were quite prolific, particularly Sheasel, and Fisher got 20-odd disposals, I didn't see them sort of cutting us open through the middle of the ground. Now, is Matthew Cottrell playing that defensive forward role pretty much like a winger as well, where he is pretty much sort of responsible, not for tagging any of those players, because I didn't necessarily see him go, okay, you go to Sheasel or you go to Fisher. Like, he might have had them at certain times, but your job is to close down space through the arcs and making sure they don't have that outlet, because it certainly didn't feel like North were able to get that game going, whether that we just controlled the game too much for them. But as far as it, almost like they had to chip the ball around, or they didn't have direct passage. Now, I'm just thinking, is Matthew Cottrell responsible for just purely defensive, closing down space, because he can run so much and to get to different positions on the ground? Because he's certainly not winning a lot of the ball at the moment. He's just signed a 3-year contract, and he obviously fully deserves that. So I will make it a goal of mine, or a job of mine, over the course of the next few games, to actually just watch. It's hard to now watch it on TV because you don't get the whole view of the ground, just to watch what Matthew Cottrell is exactly doing it, because it just feels like he's just, I don't know, it just feels like he's, like, you go, where the fuck's Matthew Cottrell? You know, like, that's just the feeling with him at the moment, which is unfair, because he's obviously highly regarded, and is obviously really important in regards to what he's doing for this football team at the moment. Anyway, that's a wrap, guys. Look forward to doing a big preview of a really important game against the Fremantle Dockers, which is at the Adelaide Oval in Gather Round. You know, they've started the season really well. They're 3-0. They've beaten Brisbane as well. So they've had a win against Brisbane, which we did. They beat the Crows yesterday. So, yeah, they're up and about. And, yeah, it should be a good game. Speak soon.